Hello and welcome to today's premiere video where I'm going to talk about the latest news that we've got from the Polkadot ecosystem, and that's about ChainX and also about Kusama. Just some more news on the parachain auctions and the crowd loans. Just a kind of summary on how that whole thing works, which is pretty good because it is written down, so you could just basically read it until you get it, if you know what I mean. Because I know some people find it hard to understand when somebody explains it to them, whereas if they actually visually see it and they read it, then they actually get the whole thing and how it actually works. So let's kick it off here and talk about ChainX. So we can see it's currently trading at 1468, but we're not going to be talking about the price in today's video. We're actually going to be talking about the news, like I said, and we're going to start it off with the ChainX halving event, which is the very first halving event. Now, it was supposed to happen on the 25th of May, but because of the average block generation, which takes 6 seconds, it's being pushed to the 5th of June. So we can see here the estimated time is Saturday the 5th of June, but this isn't set in stone because once again, it is based on the block generation as it says here. So this could potentially change when it gets closer to that date, right? Even like in a couple of weeks, it could change, right? It all depends on that average generation time, right, of the block. Now, let's talk about the news here. So what have ChainX posted? Well, they've actually posted something in relation to a halving NFT design competition. So do check this out, but I'm not going to be talking about this in today's video. My focus is actually going to be on SherpaX because this is the one that I've been waiting to get more information on, and I'm sure you have been waiting too, because we're going to get an airdrop as PCX holders. If you're a PCX holder, you're going to get an airdrop. If you hold PCX on MXC exchange, you will qualify for that airdrop, but make sure that you don't have any orders open, because if you have an order open, then you don't qualify. So let's look at the article to see what it's all about. So SherpaX Kusama parachain slot auction. This was posted 7 hours ago, so it is an article from today, and we're going to read this article because there is important information here. So that's why I wanted to cover it, especially if you haven't had the time to check the tweet from ChainX or to read it. Maybe you just want to watch the video. Now, the Kusama parachain slot auction has entered the startup stage. After the common good parachains are successfully deployed, and of course this is referring to ones like Polka BDC from Interlay and also Snowfork for Ethereum. It's basically a bridge, and aside from that, there are likely going to be other ones too, but these two are critical because they are needed for the ecosystem, right? Now, the auction process will start as the canary network of ChainX, SherpaX, with the token KSX. It will participate in the Kusama parachain auction. And actually, I don't even think it's called a token because I had this debate before. It's likely going to be called a coin as well, just because PCX is a coin. It gets generated from the blocks, and SherpaX is also going to get is also going to have KSX, which gets generated from the blocks, because you can run a validator on SherpaX's parachain. So that means it is a coin. KSX will be a coin. Now, they will participate in the Kusama parachain auction. Let's review some important facts. So note, this article is based on a 6-month lease slot period. 4 slots make in 2 years. Now, with Kusama likely having shorter lease periods, the numbers below will be changed accordingly once these are known. And this is something that Darren Research told me in the interview as well, that is not set in stone. We don't know what the lease periods are going to be like. It could even be shorter. We could even have 3 months lease periods for Kusama, because remember, it is an experimental network. It is the canary network. Some people don't like that word experimental, but it is, right? At the end of the day, experiments will take place on Kusama, aside from projects which are only going to be on Kusama. So KSX, it has an initial issuance of 21 million. We already knew this from the light paper, okay, or the white paper, with a maximum of 10% additional issuance each year. So that means that it's basically inflationary, right? We're going to see 2.1 million KSX get generated every year, and this is likely from the blocks, which means that if you run a validator or if you decide to stake, you're not likely going to be paid so much, right? With only 10% being generated, the validator is going to get a share of those transaction fees, and likely the 10% is going to be spread across depending on how much KSX you hold. And it depends on the number of validators too, right, that are going to run, and the candidate nodes and so on. So it's going to get shared. It's likely going to end up becoming maybe 8%, maybe even less. Who knows? We don't know 100% sure until the whole thing goes live, right? But we can only assume that it's going to be a maximum of 10%. and then we're gonna have less than that, which is more than likely when you decide to stake. So that's mainly reserved for future Kusama parachain auction incentives. Now, what's interesting is this, right? Mainly reserved for future Kusama parachain auctions incentive. So does this actually mean that when you actually run a validator, you generate the okay, I think I know what it means here. I think that a share from the 10% is actually gonna go to the future Kusama parachain auction incentives, but then a share of that will also be going to the validators, which means that the nominators, that is the person staking on a validator, will also get a share of that. So we could expect that less than 10%, actually we'll know for sure that less than 10% is going to be paid out to you as a nominator. So it's not really going to be that much, right? Considering how much we're getting at the moment, which is like 38% for staking PCX before the halving, right? It is quite a big difference. So let's talk about the KSX token distribution. Well, we've got the PCX airdrop, which has a maximum of 10,500,000 KSX. That's going to be the maximum amount that's going to get distributed depending on the date of the snapshot. Again, if it's after the halving, you're not going to get KSX on a 1-to-1 ratio with your PCX holding. You could potentially get 0.95, 0.89, 0.79, right? This could happen. I don't think it's going to be that low. I think it's going to be more around the 0.9 range based on what Alex, the admin from the ChainX Telegram channel, told me when I had them on my channel. So yeah, it does depend on the date of the snapshot. Now the auction incentives, we've got 5 million that are going to the incentives. It's an equal share for all KSM locked. So that means that if you decide to help SherpaX Bond as a parachain by locking your KSM for 2 years, and we'll talk about that because they are looking at getting the 2-year lease. If you decide to do that, you're going to share the 5 million depending on how much you bid, right? Depending on how much you bid, you're going to get a share of that 5 million KSX allocated to you. So that's good to know, right? It's good to know. At least we've got the numbers. Now we can get a general idea of what you could expect, right? So that's good. Now the bonus incentives, 3.4 million KSX is going to be distributed to the bonus incentives, and that's extra on top of the auction incentive. So we're going to find out more about this further down because they're talking about how these bonuses are going to be distributed based on various ways and various actions that you take. And then the treasury gets 2.1 million KSX. So it's going to be managed by the council, used for operational costs, marketing and other incentives. And this is again related to the tips as well, which I was telling you about. If you decide to contribute in some way, be it an article on Medium, be it some stickers, maybe any type of community contribution that helps ChainX or maybe helps to spread the word about ChainX, then you will be eligible for a tip if you decide to apply for it. Of course, all you need to do is just pay the transaction fee within the treasury and the tip section. I've covered that in various videos. I think I've even covered that in the dedicated detailed tutorial of ChainX. If you check that out, it should pop up on the top right hand corner of the screen. Now, before we move on here, I'd like to thank today's channel sponsors, KeyFi. So let's hear it from KeyFi and then we'll continue on with the rest of the video. This video is sponsored by KeyFi. KeyFi is an all-in-one platform for tracking, swap and staking your tokens and more. Think of KeyFi as a DeFi aggregator where you can do most things DeFi, which stands for decentralized finance. Think of the ability to supply liquidity to various pools of your choice, ones which pay better than others, as well as swapping tokens in and out using platforms like Uniswap or 1inch and choosing which platform to use for such swaps. So it gives you flexibility, basically bringing all DEXs together in one place. They've started off on Ethereum and are now also on Binance Smart Chain, which means if you are interested, the token with the ticker symbol KeyFi is tradable on Uniswap as an ERC20 token on Ethereum and on PancakeSwap for the Binance Smart Chain. The team consists of the co-founder and tech lead Ben Gervais, who's got 13 plus years experience in web development and startups, as well as 3 plus years experience at Selfkey as head of R&D working on decentralized identity technologies. The total supply of the token is 10 million, with a large batch being locked up. One special update that's coming to KeyFi with more details to be announced soon is something called Key tokens. The name has yet to be decided, but a Key token is a fungible interest-bearing token that also earns you KeyFi just for holding it. Key tokens will help a user allocate their funds into a basket of DeFi tokens that are selected by an AI model. For more details on KeyFi, please check the video popping up on the top right hand corner of the screen. Thank you for watching the clip. Now, to continue on here, bonus incentives are distributed from the bonus incentives pool of 3.4 million KSX as a percentage increase over the KSX granted from the auction incentives. Now, the conditions for these are specified as follows. Activity bonus, so participate in the warm-up activities initiated by ChainX, such as the Twitter competitions. This bonus does not overlap with other bonus methods. The specific bonus ratio is based on each event. Then we've got the invitation bonus, so by inviting other users to participate in the auction and locking KSM to support SherpaX, the inviter and the invitee each receive an additional 5% of the invitee's auction incentives. The invitation mechanism will be launched before the auction starts, and then the quantity bonus, according to the quantity of KSM locked during the auction, an additional quantity bonus can be obtained. These are shown in the table below. So the 5% bonus incentive for the 100 KSM being bid in total during the auction, right? That's a good bonus incentive if you think about it. We're talking $40,000, just over $40,000 in total. And again, this is not only referring to one person, this is referring as a whole when it comes to the actual auction, because not everyone can afford to bid $40,000 worth of KSM, right? Let's be honest. But it all depends on how many people decide to bid, and the more that do it, obviously the bigger the bonus incentive is for everyone. So aside from the standard KSX that you're gonna get, which is associated to the which they've mentioned here up at the top, right? The equal share for all KSM locked, which is the 5 million. You also get the extra on top of the auction incentive. So 3.4 million is related to that, and I think that's being distributed here in this sense here, right? Based on this bonus incentive scheme. So obviously, if 5,000 KSM gets bid for SherpaX, then a 40% bonus incentive is given. Of course, if SherpaX successfully bond and it's not a different parachain. But again, this can apply to all the different parachain auctions. So it doesn't mean that SherpaX need to win the first one, and I don't think they'll win the first one. I know it may sound pessimistic, but it's the truth. I think Karura are going to win the first one, and probably Shiden Network from Plasm are going to win the second one. From my personal opinion, likely Moon River as the third, and then maybe Fala, maybe Darwinia's Crab, or maybe SherpaX. I'm not sure which one of them is going to make it then. But yeah, I don't think either of these are going to make it in the top 3 auctions, which means that we're going to need to wait at least 6 weeks. So we'll have to see 3 different auctions take place before we're likely going to see SherpaX bond. And then we'll need to wait probably even longer, who knows, because there will be a lot of competition, I can tell you that. So let's continue on here. So SherpaX slot bidding time. Based on the preliminary questionnaire, research and comprehensive consideration of the project, the decision was made to bid for a 2-year lease on the parachain slot. So now we got confirmation that the ChainX team want to see SherpaX as a parachain for 2 years, right? And then we've got the incentive release method. So the PCX airdrop, a one-time release after the parachain is online. And this is, of course, not necessarily in a one-to-one ratio. It does depend, but we know there's over 10 million KSX, which is going to get airdropped to us. And so far, I don't think there are 10 million PCX so far. But again, remember that we're generating 50 PCX per block at the moment. So until the halving event, and then it's going to be less. So it all depends on how many PCX coins are going to be available in circulation at the time of the airdrop, when the airdrop is going to happen, or better said, at the time of the snapshot once the parachain is online. Because as soon as that Genesis block is created, the PCX airdrop takes place, right? So yeah, just assuming here, assuming that we're going to have over 11 million PCX, we know that 10.5 million, right? 10.5 million, I think that's what I said. 10.5 million is going to get distributed in this airdrop, then you're not going to get it on a 1-to-1 ratio. It's pretty obvious, right? It's going to get divided by the 11 million. So you're going to get 0.9 something, right? So it's not the end of the world. Again, it is still good if you think about it. Now, the auction plus the bonus incentive. So that's going to be a one-time release after the parachain goes online. And then the KSM liquidity release. Okay, so normally KSM locked during the auctions will remain locked for the entire lease period. This means you will be locked for half a year. For users who deem this undesirable, we've devised an alternative way of participating in the auction. So that's interesting, right? This is something that SherpaX have thought of, and again, it is going to be different for different parachains. Not all of them will have the same rules, and this is what makes it more interesting. Now, instead of locking KSM in the auction directly, users can lock KSM with a trustee, which will be responsible for the asset security of the escrow address. After the parachain slot auction is started, the address agent will lock this in the slot auction. So again, that is something unique. So after the user locks KSM with the trustee, they will get XKSM, again, which is going to be a token that's pegged on a 1-to-1 ratio as a voucher. So XKSM can freely circulate and be traded after SherpaX successfully wins the parachain slot and the parachain is online. After the KSM lockup period expires, it can be exchanged for KSM on a 1-to-1 ratio, and in this way, users can obtain KSX incentives without sacrificing KSM liquidity and participating in the parachain slot auction. And here comes my question now. I'm actually interested. So who's actually supplying the liquidity for XKSM? Is that automated in the system? Are they just basically generating that through that escrow, or how will that actually work? Because if ChainX also want to have this DeFi platform integrated within the dApp, then it does mean that maybe we need to provide liquidity for XKSM somehow, and maybe we can generate that liquidity somehow, right? I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if it's going to be an instant swap or how they're going to do that. It's going to be interesting to find out, and we're likely going to get more info once SherpaX gets closer to launch, of course. So to continue on here now, after the KSM lockup period expires, it can be exchanged for KSM on a 1-to-1 ratio, and this way users can obtain KSX incentives without sacrificing KSM liquidity and participating in the parachain slot auction. Now, you are free to choose either solution: directly lock in during the auction or lock in with the trustee. There's no difference in incentives. The only difference is the ability to have XKSM available to circulate. More details will be released gradually as the parachain slot auction advances. So that's really interesting, right? Now we've just seen that there are going to be some differences when it comes to all these parachain auctions, and not every parachain has the same rules, right? Every parachain is going to be different, and aside from all that, you're also going to be able to take part in these parachain auctions using one of the exchanges that supports it, right? OKX said they're going to support it. I think MXC also said they're going to support it. So Huobi said they're going to support it. So a lot of these exchanges are going to support the parachain auctions, and that's always a good thing, right? Now, let's move on here and talk about this article from Kusama, and this is with regards to the slot auctions and the crowd loans, and this is the final article for the video. So we're actually, if we go to this link here on the kusama.net website, let's talk about the parachain auctions, right? They're actually explaining it here. So parachain slot auctions follow a modified candle auction format where the exact endpoint of the auction is unknown by participants in order to prevent auction sniping. The strategy of bidding at the last moment for more accurate price discovery. So that's really interesting, right? We already know that information, but in case you didn't know, they're just basically reiterating it here. So that's a good summary of how it's going to work, which means that it could end at any time. It has a set end time, but the bidding could end at any time. So obviously the project that has received the highest amount of bids is gonna win at the time decided by the blockchain. So that is great, right? Because that prevents whales from controlling the game. There could be multiple whales, right? There could be multiple whales. There's no guarantee for you as a whale to be able to control who wins it, and that's great. The power is not to the whales, the power is to the people, and that's great. So to continue on, the team uploads their parachain code and starts bidding by specifying a contiguous range of 6 weeks lease periods, and the amount of KSM they're willing to lock up for the duration of the chosen range. You can open the bidding, the open bidding continues for the duration of the auction. Teams can see other bids and increase their bid over time to stay competitive throughout the auction. And at the close of the auction, the precise moment of the auction's close is randomly determined by a verifiable random function, VRF. So this is basically just going into the details here. Now the KSM amount bid by the winning teams remain locked for the duration of the lease period, and after which it can be unlocked. The parachain is automatically onboarded at the start of the lease period. And teams can extend their lease by winning another auction before the conclusion of their current slot lease period. So that's basically saying here that when the 2 years are up, they can extend their lease, right? But they will need to win another auction. So that's why we're seeing SherpaX coming up with this strategy of the 10% inflation, because they're well aware that after 2 years, they're going to need to extend that lease, right? They need to extend that lease because ChainX are going to play an important role on Polkadot. They're going to be that secondary relay chain next year, right? So they need, 2 years is not going to be enough. If they just build that relay chain next year, they're going to need more time too, right? To get everything in order. So it's the same with SherpaX. So that's why they've come up with this idea, and I really like that, and it all starts to make sense now if you think about it, if we're comparing both of these articles, right? So let's talk about the slot crowdloans. Now some teams may choose to crowdfund their slot lease using Kusama's built-in crowdloan mechanism, which allows people to contribute by agreeing to lock up their own KSM until the end of the lease period. Teams can reward their contributors however they see fit and can structure their crowdloan in various ways, hosting it either natively on Kusama or on a third-party platform. And this once again goes back to that trustee that SherpaX are going to use, and we're likely going to see trustees being used by other platforms too. Now the typical process for a crowdloan conducted natively on Kusama will look something like this. The team creates a crowdloan campaign, setting a maximum of total allowed contributions and a campaign end date. To account for the possibility of losing one or more auctions, a campaign can last for several auctions and invites their communities to participate. Now the crowdloan contributors initiate a special transaction allocating transferable KSM to the campaign's index. This is different from a normal send transaction. Contributors should not send KSM to an external account, and this is just basically to remind you here. I've seen this time and time again, even with people watching my staking videos or my videos in general. They're staking KSM, they're staking PCX, and it doesn't really happen with PCX, thankfully, because the structure is really well designed. But I have received emails from people doing this with DOT and with KSM, where they're actually transferring their DOT or their KSM to the validators directly, and there's no way to get it back, right? Unless the validator is kind enough to send them back to you if they see an odd transaction of a large sum of money, well, of cryptocurrencies, straight to their address. Because remember that they're under no obligation to do that. Nobody can force them to do that, not even like the Polkadot governance or the Kusama governance can force them to do that. If you made this kind of mistake, it's not reversible unless you have some way to get in touch with these validators. Some of them are in private groups. I know that for ChainX there is a private group for validators. I'm also in it because I was thinking to run up a validator. So you have to ask people like Dan Reeser for support because they likely know where these groups exist, right? Especially because the Polkadot and the Kusama groups on Telegram are now announcements only, so you cannot chat there. So I think you need to go on Discord. I believe on Discord you can find a lot of the validators from both Kusama and Polkadot, so that's probably the best place to start, and maybe ask people like Dan Reeser who are involved in the community to find out how you can get in touch with these specific validators. Some of them have email addresses. So yeah, sorry to away from the subject here, but it's just something that I think should have been mentioned a long time ago, because people have lost their KSM and their DOT this way. It is sad. It puts a negative vibe, and it's difficult for the person who did that as well, especially because they've no way to get it back unless the validator sends it back. So yeah, be very, very careful with that. So to continue on here, the KSM contributions can be submitted throughout the duration of the crowdloan campaign or until an auction is won, up to the maximum amount of contributions set by the parachain team when creating the campaign. Now, number 4, if there are enough contributions to win an auction, the full amount of KSM contributed to the campaign index will remain locked for the duration of the lease period, and the chain is deployed at the start of the lease period. Crowdloan KSM can be unlocked and returned to contributors' control at the end of the lease period. In the event that a crowdloan campaign ends without a team winning on an auction, contributors' KSM can be unlocked at the end of the campaign. So basically what that means is if you bid for, say, ChainX or maybe Darwinia, and the Darwinia's Crab network, because we're talking about KSM here, but again, the same rule applies to Polkadot or to SherpaX. So you basically try to bid for one of these, and then they don't actually win the auction. You will get your KSM back when the auction ends, and when the auction ends is when another parachain bonds, right? But they all start as parathreads. So they start as parathreads, as you've seen in my tutorial where I show you how it works on Rokoku testnet. It's going to be pretty much the same. They all start as parathreads. The timer starts, you start to bid, and then whoever makes it gets upgraded from parathread to parachain. So they all start on the pay-as-you-go model. And yeah, this is how it is. And then if you don't, if the one that you voted for doesn't make it, you get it back. And some of you may have plans to maybe take part in 3 or 4 different types of projects maybe, and obviously you're expecting to receive some funds from there, and it's gonna lock up your KSM, of course, as you well know. But you'll probably feel sorry if you go all into one and then that parachain doesn't actually win, and then other people are gonna win it and they're gonna, you know, get the tokens. You're not gonna get the tokens. You're gonna need to wait for the next parachain to start, for the next parachain auction to start. And yeah, it can be a bit annoying, right? But yeah, you just make sure that you're splitting. Think about diversifying, right? Even though you may like I personally like Akala network a lot. It's one I've had my eyes on for a long time. So if I was to put everything onto Akala, let's say with DOT, because with Kusama I'd have to go for Karura, which is the Canary network, but let's say for DOT I want to push everything into Akala, it's probably a bad idea, right? Because what if they don't win the first one? What if Moonbeam win the first one? What if Plasm win the first one? So then I'll be missing out on that, right? Rather, I could just split on the ones that I'm interested in. So I'm interested in Akala, I'm interested in Moonbeam, and I'm interested in Kilt. And if I decide to do that, then I need to split between the 3, right? And whichever makes it, that's great, right? I'm gonna get my DOT locked up, and I'm gonna get a share of the tokens, either all at the end of the parachain auction or distributed in batches. Like with Akala, they've already confirmed it, right? 30% is gonna get distributed to you straight away at the end of the auction, and then the rest throughout the time of the lease. Right, you're gonna get your very last ACA token when the end of the lease is reached. So that means that with every block, with every single block that gets generated, you're going to get some ACA tokens distributed to your wallet as the available balance, which means that they're transferable. The rest will be frozen. You'll see them, they will be in your wallet, you'll know how much you're entitled to get, but they're frozen. So they're gonna get unlocked with every block. That's what I was told, right? And have a read of this. I'm not going to read this, but I think it's very important that you read this article, and that's how to protect yourself from crowdloan scams, because people are sharing their seed phrase on Telegram. They're falling victims of scams or account passwords. So please don't do that. Please be careful who you trust. Just double check the Telegram username, but normally a team member will never, nobody should ever ask you for your seed phrase, right? It's as simple as that. If anyone tells you, yeah, if you're telling someone that you're stuck and you can't access your wallet, and they say, yeah, sure, I'll be able to help you, and they start DMing you and then they ask you for your seed phrase, then it's a scam. So be very, very careful. No admin is going to ask you for your seed phrase, because that is like giving the PIN number of your bank card. Right? It's like handing over your bank card and saying, this is my PIN number, take it. Help me with this, right? Help me with this, right? You're going to the bank and you need help, and somebody says, yeah, I'm from the bank, how can I help you? Oh, well, I've got this problem. Oh, okay, well, give me your bank card and tell me your PIN number and I can help you. And then they go away for like 20 minutes or so, and then they come back, here you go, sir, this is your card, thank you very much for your service. and then you end up checking your bank account and you notice 600 bucks is missing, right? Depending on the ATM limit that you've got, right? So yeah, I mean, this is pretty much how it is, especially actually it's even worse, because with the bank you've got a limit with that ATM, whereas a daily limit, whereas with this you lose everything, right? You lose everything. So be very, very careful with who you talk to about your account, and about giving them any kind of hints to your seed phrase. Never ever do that, and people still get scammed every single day, unfortunately. So yeah, that's it from today's video. I'd like to thank you very much for watching and staying with me till the end, and I appreciate it, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care. Bye bye.